everyone. It's 3:30, and it appears as though I see everyone but John Wheeler. Let's see if I'm just missing him. Let's give him just a second.
I spoke to Representative Wheeler about 15 or 20 minutes ago. He was trying to sort through the multiple links to figure out which one he was supposed to be in. So I know he's trying to get in.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, as we sit here, what documents, and I apologize if I'm sure this is already, but sorting through the several emails as well, what bill would be helpful to bring up, if you will, or bills multiple that I think we're working one today maybe, or hearing?
So we will be hearing two bills, House Bill 2008 and Senate Bill 14.
SB 14 and HB 2008.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And for what it's worth, I still can't find any testimony on the website.
John, are you connected securely or unsecurely? How are you accessing?
I'm going through the VPN, but if the issue is public access, it ought to be accessible on the website. I didn't know there was a different page, but anyway, I don't need the testimony. I know how to vote no. Thanks. And as you can see, Kathy's telling us in the chat that it won't accept, she can't upload the testimony for today.
John, I just received.
We did just receive it via email.
From Kathy.
Yeah, I was just going to say we did receive it all via email from Kathy.
Yeah, just maybe a minute ago.
Okay, so we're all here and we all have the testimony in our email for House Bill 2008. So we are going to get started, committee. We will begin with requests for bill introductions. Does anyone on the committee have a bill that they would like to request to be introduced? I'm not seeing anyone. I have two. One is RS 0525. That's the bill we heard last year that was moving forward that has to do with the makeup of the State Board of Indigent Defense Services. That came out of the governor's office had a request, because as you know, it had to do with populations of cities, which was causing a conflict on how members for that board were appointed. And then the second one I have is on behalf of Representative Parker, RS 0526, which is again a bill we had last year on the spousal exception to sexual battery. Any objection to either of those bills? Seeing none, we'll get those introduced.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, would you request those not speaking to mute? There's a lot of background coming through.
Okay, say that again. You heard or you didn't hear me?
I did. I just requested that if you would ask the committee to mute themselves when they are not the ones speaking, it would help with the feedback.
Very good. If everyone else could mute themselves, that would be great. Okay. So Scott Schultz. Scott's here somewhere on the screen, and Scott has a bill he'd like to request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, member of the committee. I have 21 RS 0123. It allows courts to prohibit possession of a firearm in a temporary custody order pursuant to the Care and Treatment Act for mentally ill persons.
Any questions for Scott?
All I know is that Susie Carlson requested that.
Representative Wheeler, if you could mute your WebEx, that would be awesome.
I didn't know it was going to be all of that. The kid didn't know it was so easy.
Mr. Chairman, you do have the ability to mute him.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, I think we're good. Any objections to Scott's bill request? Seeing none, it will be introduced. Anyone else here today with a bill that they would like to request its introduction? Seeing none, we will keep moving through the agenda. First of all, I want to give you all a little bit of an update of what transpired on Friday or Thursday. As you know, we worked House Bill 2048. Unfortunately, one of our members got led into and didn't know any better, didn't think we were meeting because they were in a different WebEx room. Representative Carmichael and I had some discussions that evening about what we should do about that, because it certainly does not seem fair that a member does not have the ability to participate in a discussion or vote. I held the committee report on House Bill 2048 until this morning, and I did turn it in. And the reason being is the House rules say that I have 2 days to turn it in. And so while I held it over the weekend to think about it, it was turned in. I don't anticipate, at least from what I'm being told, I don't anticipate us bringing House Bill 2048 above the line. If that happens, there are some options that the committee, we could either have this bill sent back to committee. There could be an objection to the adoption of the committee report. There are options. So if that happens, I certainly want to visit with those that were affected and Representative Carmichael to see what route we go. But so stay in touch on that. One lesson I learned, and I hope everyone else learned from that, is that I need to do a better job of making sure you're all here before we begin. And if you find yourself, hopefully it's not going to happen, because I don't think we're going to be sent multiple WebEx invitations for the same meeting date anymore. But if you appear either in person or in WebEx and you don't see me, shoot me a text. And if you don't have my cell phone number, I'll get it to you. Let me know and I will stop the meeting until we figure out where you are. So I'm not necessarily going to wait for you if I don't see you here. I'll do a little bit of delay. I hope we start as close to 3:30 as possible every day. But if you find yourself somewhere without me, let me know and I'll stop until we find you. Any questions on any of that? Seeing none, I will open the hearing on House Bill 2008 and ask Natalie to give us a brief overview of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2008 would allow the Attorney General, in consultation with Native American Indian tribes, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center, and other appropriate state agencies, to coordinate training regarding missing and murdered Indigenous persons for law enforcement agencies throughout the state. And I can take any questions you have. Any questions for Natalie? For those who were on this committee last year, you'll recall that we heard this bill, moved it forward, and it died because of COVID. So if there are no questions for Natalie, we will begin with proponents. And the first one I have up is Representative Victors.
Mr. Chairman, this is Representative Samsel. Can you refresh us a bit on what that history was? And that may come from one of the proponents if you'd rather deflect it. But did we pass it out? Did it hit the floor? What was its status, if you will?
It looks like Representative Victors is nodding her head like she knows. I know we got it out of committee, and I think we got it across the floor. But we'll let her share that with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hello, good afternoon, colleagues. This is the first time I ever testified online, so whatever. I'm just glad that we went ahead and we're having this hearing. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking and Vice Chairman, for allowing this hearing today. It's good to see you all, even though it's online. I hope that you all are well and safe. Just to give a little background information, and also I see some new faces as well. My name is Ponkwe Victors. Dr. Ponkwe Victors. I'm from Wichita, Kansas, and I represent the 103rd District. And I look forward to working with you all A little background about this bill. I brought it forward last year, and it seems weird when I say last year, it feels like 10 years ago. I brought it forward last year. It did pass your Judiciary Committee, and it passed the House with a full support, 125. There was nobody that voted against it, and I'm very thankful for your support, and I ask for your continued support today. It did make it to the Senate side, and we had a hearing in the Senate Fed and State Affairs Committee, and it passed the Senate committee as well. It didn't make it to the Senate floor because we left in early March because of the pandemic that happened. So I have hope this year that we'll get it across the finish line, but I can't do that by myself. I can do it with y'all's help. So I would appreciate that. And so let me go ahead and talk about the bill that we have before us today, House Bill 2008. And it relates to the training of law enforcement and requiring coordination from the Attorney General's office to include the murdered and missing Indigenous people in Kansas. We're dealing with a health crisis right now. We're dealing with a health pandemic. But in Native American country, we have our own crisis that we're dealing with, and this is one of them. One of the issues that's at the top for us, and that is the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis. Unfortunately, I have relatives who are still missing. I have friends that have been murdered, and there's really no data collection about this. I'm also the vice chairwoman of the National Caucus of Native American State Legislatures with NCSL, and I've worked on this issue with other Native American state legislators across the country. Last year in DC, we heard from top officials about this crisis, and I would like to share with you some statistics of why this is so important. More than 4 in 5 American Indian Alaska Native women have experienced violence in their lifetime. More than 4 in 5 Alaska Native men have experienced violence in their lifetime. Currently, Native American women are missing and murdered at high rates across the country. On some reservations, Native American women are murdered at more than 10 times the national average. And there's a misconception out there that all Native Americans live on reservations, and that's not true. More than 70% of the Native American populations live in urban cities. In 2019, lawmakers in 14 states introduced at least 30 measures to address the underreporting and data collection problems that make cases of the missing and murdered Indigenous women difficult to solve. 17 of the 30 measures were enacted in 2019, and this is why I'm taking on this legislation again, because it's so important. As Native American women, I know, and my family knows, that every time that I get out on the highway or, I go somewhere long distance by myself, I always have that statistic lingering over my head. And so I'm always checking in with my family because they know that at a high rate that we are missing or we come up murdered. And it seems like nobody cares, or nobody's doing nothing about it, and it's really sad. So I ask you to please support House Bill 2008. And Mr. Chairman, at the official time, I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We'll do both proponents and then we'll do some questions, okay?
Okay.
Next we have Representative Hasway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Representative Christina Haswood from District 10, which covers the southeast of Douglas County into Baldwin City. Thank you so much to the chairman and members of the committee for allowing this time for me to speak. My name is again Christina Haswood, and when I say I'm Danette, I'm from the Navajo Nation. I get a little irate because our reservation is from the Arizona, New Mexico, Four Corners area. So just to share with you, my parents made that really difficult decision at the ages of 21 and 22 to move off the reservation to have a better pursuit of life for their future family, me. And, Lawrence has always been great. I am so proud to be born in Lawrence and raised in District 10 my entire life, which includes Haskell Indian Nations University. That's Haskell Indian Nations University. I ask for you in support of this bill. Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples, also known as MMIP, includes women, men, and two-spirited peoples who are disproportionately impacted by this public health crisis. It is a movement that brings action and awareness to the disproportionate rates of abduction, murder, violence, and human trafficked Indigenous peoples. According to the 20 National Vital Statistics Systems, homicide was the third leading cause of death for American Indian Alaska Native males aged 1 through 44 years old, and it was the sixth leading cause for American Indian Alaska Native females aged 1 to 44 years old. A resource named ks.gov is an online database system by the National Institute of Justice and managed by the University of North Texas Health Science Center, where you can search and create files for missing loved ones. As of January 7, 2021, there are currently a reported 696 missing American Indian Alaska Natives in the United States. In Kansas, I did the due diligence of researching in this database system of Kansas's missing murdered Indigenous peoples. 3 people's names have came up. One is Michael L. Aycock from Walton, Kansas, who was last seen on May 30th, 2017.
And with tribal land in Kansas, we have, I think, 5 recognized tribes at this point in Kansas, but I could be wrong on that. And with our history and our nation's history has a tragic story to tell about how we have valued Indigenous lives. And I think that now that we know better, we know more, we can do better. And so this bill is not going to fix the problem, but it is a good first step in getting us in the right direction to really understand the scope of the problem and what we might be able to do as we move forward. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I will stand for questions whenever you see fit.
Very good, thanks, Sarah. Committee written testimony, which should be online and in your email. We also have proponent testimony from Derek Smith, Kansas Attorney General, Brad Smoot on behalf of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, Alexandra Holder, an activist and a university student, and then William Wilkinson, president of the Student Government Association at Haskell Indian Nations University. Is there anyone else online that wants to be a proponent? Okay, so committee questions for our 3 proponents? I'm not seeing any. They did such a great job. So we will now move on to neutral testimony. I have Robert Jacobs, the executive officer with the KBI. Welcome, Robert. Are you wanting to testify or just written? Your call, you're here.
Thank you, Chairman Patton and members of the committee. I'm happy to answer questions. I did provide written testimony, a neutral written testimony. What I intended to do with that was to lay out for the committee the 2 databases that we predominantly keep that keeps track of missing persons in Kansas, as well as a database, the Kansas Incident-Based Reporting System, which tracks all offenses in Kansas, which would include homicides. And so I provided some testimony that outlines the numbers and some data regarding the numbers of missing and murdered Indigenous people who have been reported in Kansas over the last 10 years, and then what is currently, who are currently also being reported. Representative Haswood laid out 3 people, I believe you said, in your testimony. I actually found 5 that are currently still in our system that are currently missing. And so we stand to assist the Attorney General's office in any type of training that they encourage us to do in this. And I will stand for questioning at the appropriate time.
Very good. Any questions, committee? Not seeing any. We'll close this portion. I don't show any opponents listed. Is there anyone who's an opponent? Very good. Not seeing any. Close the hearing on House Bill 2008. And committee, sometime in the near future, be ready to work that one. Next, we'll move on to Senate Bill 14. And I'll open that hearing and ask Natalie to give us a brief overview of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 14 is the Senate's version of the governmental response to the COVID pandemic. And so since we just heard those provisions as they were in the House version, I think it might be best for me to just explain to you what the differences are. So that way you guys know the differences between this and what you took action on last week. So section 1 is the same. That's the to-go alcohol sales. The House version would extend those provisions through June 1st of 2021. This Senate version extends them through March 31st of 2021. Section 2, in the House bill was the unemployment insurance sections. That is not included in this Senate bill. So the extension of that suspension of the waiting week is not in this version. So the section 2 that's in the Senate bill is contains the amendments to KSA 48.924. So the difference there, we extended those provisions through June 1st of 2021. This Senate bill extends them through March 31st of 2021. The next section, the 48.924B, this is the ratification of the disaster declaration. So the House version extended that through March 5th of 2021. And the Senate version extends that through March 31st of 2021. They both also prohibit the governor from requesting a new disaster related to COVID during 2021. The changes to 48.925, similarly, the House version has those extended and then reverting back to pre-2016 version on June 1st, 2021. The Senate version makes that change on March 31st, 2021. 48.925A, that is the limitation of business activity. So as introduced, we extended that in the House version through June 1st of 2021. The Senate extends that through March 31st, 2021. Of course, in your action that you took on House Bill 2048, you made some amendments to that section, but those amendments would not be contained in this Senate version. So they look identical except for the date. The health sections, all three of those, KSA 48.963, 965, and 966, the House version of the bill extended those through December 31st of 2021. The Senate version extends them through March 31st of 2021. Again, the amendments that you made in the House committee related to those sections would not be reflected in the Senate version. And then finally, KSA 605504, which is the business liability provision. The House version extended that through December 31st of 2021. The Senate version would extend that through March 31st of 2021. And I can take any questions.
Questions for Natalie? I'm not seeing any. Natalie, just one piece of clarification on the unemployment section. While that's not included in the Senate bill, my understanding, if you know, is that the governor has extended that herself in an executive order, correct? So if we don't, the unemployment benefits will still continue.
Yes, the governor has issued an executive order extending that suspension of the waiting week period. So that would still be covered as of now under that executive order.
Okay. Any other questions for Natalie? Not seeing any, we will move on to our proponents. Somewhat of the same crew as we had last week. First one up, Nicole Milo is back from Centura Health.
Yes, thank you, Representative Patton. And as you just mentioned, my testimony will look eerily similar to that that I shared last week. So as a reminder for this group, my name is Nicole Milo. I'm the Assistant Director for Government and Community Affairs for Centura Health. We are a not-for-profit health system in Colorado and Western Kansas, and we have 17 hospitals of our own and 14 affiliate hospitals with 7 regional hospitals in the Southwest Kansas area. We want to ensure that you are aware that we are a proponent of the components of Senate Bill 14 as you heard me attest to last week. The shifting of resources for our system has been incredibly valuable as we continue to work through the pandemic. And as mentioned last week, PPE in the spring was a limiting resource for us. And now as we are continuing to treat the citizens of Kansas, the limiting resource for us are our clinical teams. And so in the last 90 days, 72 of those, we've experienced some sort of shortage in St. Catherine in Garden City. And of those 72 days, we can experience on average a gap or 40 to 50 missing staff members at any given time. And those staff members are calling out of work either due to exposure or illness from the virus, childcare issues, homeschooling, or just general fatigue, which is really becoming cumbersome for our frontline care workers. So as we are working to continue to treat the residents of Southwest Kansas and beyond, we would respectfully ask for you to continue with the forward momentum on Senate Bill 14 to ensure that we have the flexibility to provide the much needed care to the residents. And I would just like this group to know that while we have a vaccine on the ground and it is being distributed, we do as a health system know that we will be vaccinating residents.
There we go, there we go. Okay, the floor is yours again, sorry about that.
No worries. I think that I had just said that vaccines were on the ground and we expected to be in these circumstances through the fall of 2021. And then actually that was going to be the end of my testimony, Representative Patton, and I'm happy to stick around for any questions that any of you may have.
Awesome, thank you. Next, Audrey Dunkel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, not going to be anything surprising here. Certainly, we support the opportunity, support Senate Bill 2014. Wow, the technology problem may really be me. I apologize. As we've said before, hospitals continue to serve on the front lines of addressing this pandemic, and you gave us some flexibilities in 2016 that we would like to see continue. Those flexibilities that we would like to see continue, you'll see in Section 7 of Senate Bill 2014, as far as what's related to telemedicine, which we know we've seen a lot more utilization of. It helps us keep people who are frail in health. They continue to have care, but they don't have to go sit in a waiting room with a bunch of other sick people, which is very important. In addition, Sections 8 and 9 have provided some regulatory flexibilities as far as staffing. And I know Nicole mentioned that as well. Staffing continues to be a struggle. It's been a little bit better since we've gotten into the new year, but it's something we expect to see as a struggle, and it allows us some flexibilities as far as out of state licensure, as well as being able to use students, healthcare students, in some ways that while they're supervised, they can still do some things and help give our staff a little bit of a break. So certainly we would like to see Senate Bill 418 passed going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Rochelle Colombo, but Rochelle's is written only. And so then Tucker Polling. I think I saw Tucker on here. I can see you lighting up. There we go. Can you hear us, Tucker?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you're up.
Okay, hopefully you can see me?
No.
Okay, well, you're not missing much in terms of my visual. So I'm sorry, I was having some connectivity problems there, it appears, and so I didn't hear a lot of the prior testimony. I'm essentially here to provide, in substance, the same testimony I've already provided this committee. We are supportive of the amendment to this bill that this committee made, which I believe is in the Senate version is section 10H, I believe. We support the same amendment that this committee made in the House version of the bill. And I want to clarify that the core concern is ensuring that there is a mechanism by which the board can have jurisdiction over out-of-state providers who are permitted to practice in Kansas to ensure accountability for following our law. There was some discussion in the prior hearing about the questions of which professions should be recognized as licensed professions under Kansas law versus others. That's not in controversy in this bill. Our goal in requesting the same amendment we requested in the House version of the bill, HB 2048, is simple, and that's that one, all healthcare providers lawfully permitted to practice in Kansas should follow the same rules Kansas healthcare providers must follow, and two, that the state of Kansas should have the ability to prevent providers from practicing in Kansas if they are found to have committed serious professional misconduct or to be a threat to patient safety. So, as long as that goal is met, we are open to ideas in regard to how to accomplish that. One way to accomplish that is by making the same amendment that this committee has already made in substance in House Bill 2048. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Very good, thank you. Committee, you'll notice we have written proponent testimony from Chuck Duncan, John Jinks, Amanda Stanley, Kevin Walker Sr., Eric Stafford, Randy Stuckey, and Shahira Stafford, Ron Hines, Scott Schneider, Dan Murray, and Tara Mays. Is there anyone else that's a proponent that wants to offer testimony? Not seeing any. I don't have any neutral conferees listed either. Is there anyone who's neutral? And before I move on to opponents, I forgot to do questions. So let's do questions for proponents. Are there any questions that we have for the proponents today, committee? Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for Mr. Polling, if he's still available.
I am, sir. Yes.
Thank you. After the committee did its work last week on, I believe it was 2048, it was brought to some representatives' attention by other representatives that perhaps the amendments that you have suggested are designed to create advantage for one side or the other in the dispute between the certified registered nurse anesthetist and an anesthesia assistants. And I would appreciate it if you could address how your proposed amendment or your request might affect the ability of the anesthesia assistants to practice, and how or whether this favors the CRNAs over the anesthesia assistants who are attempting to gain statutory recognition of their profession.
Thank you. Tucker Poling, Acting Executive Director of the Kansas State Board of Healing Arts. I appreciate your question, Representative Carmichael, because that's one of the things I wanted to clarify. We are certainly not taking a position on the issue of CAAs versus CRNAs, or for or against any particular profession at all. Our concern is a jurisdictional one, that practicing here, that you follow our laws, and that if you're shown to be unsafe, we can remove you from practice. So, this, in my view, the revision that we are requesting on this bill, if you were to move this bill out, and I think I need to correct myself, I think I said it was Section 10 of this bill. It's Section 10 of the House bill. It's Section 9 of this bill, SB 14. So what I'm referring to is the amendments you made to Section 10 of the House bill at subsection H, but in this bill I'm referring to 10 subsection H. The deletion of the first and last sentence of 9H of this bill, I do not believe goes to the controversy of whether CAA should be licensed in this state or not. That is a separate issue that the legislature will deal with it when you all deem it appropriate and in the appropriate context. This is really about our ability to license, our ability to make sure that the healthcare providers who are here are following the same laws that every other healthcare provider in Kansas currently has to follow. Now, with that said, I am completely open to, other ways to potentially do that other than deleting those two sentences. Another potential way might be to add a sentence, in 9H of this bill or 10H of that bill, stating that a healthcare professional practicing in Kansas under the provisions of this subsection shall be subject to the Kansas Professional Practice Acts and shall be a licensee for the purposes of those professional acts. That's another way. So, I'll leave it up to the discretion of the committee as to how if and how to address our concern, but we don't believe that our concern is the same issue as this whole licensure controversy, because that's a separate question. Whether they should have independent licensure is a separate question.
And Mr. Poling, with the chair's permission, let me follow up just a little bit more. You are the expert on how these Board of Healing Arts statutes ought to be drafted. I presume that the language you have brought us is the preferred language as opposed to the alternative you posed to us a moment ago. Would that be fair?
That's correct. That's correct.
And then finally, with the chair's permission, finally, I have a concern that perhaps, given the lack of jurisdiction over out-of-state providers practicing in Kansas right now, that we may have certified anesthesia assistants practicing without any kind of a license. Is that going on, or are they practicing directly under the supervision of a physician like any other mid-level or ancillary person, or are they just out there practicing on their own for as long as the emergency lasts?
And that's question for Mr. Me, or for me, Representative Carmichael.
Well, if me as Tucker Poling of the Board of Healing Arts, who regulates the healing arts in Kansas, yeah, that's who it'd be.
Representative, I'm sorry, I continue to have a little bit of audio issues, but I think I caught the substance. Okay, appreciate that question as well. It would be the latter of the two statements I think you said. Now, this would not license CAAs to practice here. Healthcare providers generally under 65, 28, 73G, and 65, 28, 127, healthcare professionals may practice under the direct delegation and supervision of a physician. So there is that potential for healthcare professionals to practice under that provision of law, but that is under the supervision of a physician. That is not independent licensure. And so it's a different issue. And getting the predicate of your question was, I think, whether CAAs are practicing in Kansas currently. The answer to that question, in my understanding, is no. I'm in communication with the representatives from the certified anesthesia assistants, and they have indicated to me that they will let me know if and when they are practicing here. And at this point, I do not believe there are any CAAs practicing in Kansas.
Mr. Poling, that answers my question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Samsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question, I'm not sure for who, whether it's a proponent, probably, certainly the reviser probably does not want it, but I'm just looking at the bill's history here. Senate Bill 14, can you help me understand? It looks like there was a motion over in the Senate to strike the enacting clause, which I understand from just general knowledge and background that typically kills a bill. But I'm wondering if anybody from the proponent side of the world or opponent, when we get there, but it looks like it was supported by 5 senators, Dole, Olson, Pyle, Thompson, Tyson, just trying to understand what's going on there and perhaps in conjunction with the bill that we already passed out. And Mr. Chairman, and if it makes sense to have that question answered somewhere else, that's fine too.
Does anyone want to take that question? Natalie's not looking up, so I'm taking that's a no.
Well, the best thing to do is ask the 5 senators who voted that way.
Yeah, that would be good answer, Representative Carmichael. I'm not sure what their intent was. I actually haven't even listened to their debate, so I'd encourage you to go back and listen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A follow-up for Natalie, if I may. Am I correct that when you strike an enacting clause, though, that essentially does kill the bill?
Mr. Chairman, that is a floor amendment motion that can be made that would result in killing the bill. As you know, the enacting clause has to be exactly as it is in the Constitution and every bill for it to become effective. So striking the enacting clause would have that effect, yeah.
Thank you, guys. Good enough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the proponents? Not seeing any. Let's see, I already asked about neutral, so let's move on to opponents. We have 4 listed, and I believe they are all in the committee room. We have the Reiniker family with us today. Nick, are you wanting to go first? Can you hear us, I hope? There we go.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for allowing me to speak today. Yes, I will go first. My name is Nick Reiniker from Inman, Kansas. I'm here with my family to be an opponent to Senate Bill 14 in kind of the same vein that the 5 brave senators were during the Senate session. I will just say that this state of disaster emergency. You know what? I miss you guys. I can't see you. This is kind of weird. So bear with me here. I'm just going to read a little something. Out of an abundance of caution, to preserve our republic, our state, and individual sovereignty, and for our posterity, this state of disaster emergency must end, whether it be on January 26th or by killing the enacting clause. You, as the legislature, have the power and authority to rescind any and all executive proclamations at any time while in session, I also recommend a standalone bill that whenever a governor issues such proclamations, the legislature automatically calls a special session. During the H1N1 period in 2009, the World Health Organization changed the definition of a pandemic to remove the words large number of deaths. Considering the demographic of 0 to 18-year-olds and the death rates thereof, and the admittedly unreliable usage of the PCR test, including magnification through cycles using thresholds as high as 40 to 45, we can with fair certainty conclude that the governor's proclamation is a poisonous tree that is bearing fruit that is also poisonous. Included in that, the response that has caused much more harm and death, in my opinion, than the SARS-CoV-2 disease itself. By voting yes to this bill, you are affirming that all testing including on the initial fatality that was the catalyst for proclamation is accurate. You are putting a policy trajectory in place that precludes natural so help me God made herd immunity and dictate that sovereign individuals become dependent on government immunity processes and devices of synthetic laboratory nature, including mRNA biologics. I have a little story from my Senator Jerry Moran. He once told me of talking to some natives in an African country, and their primary source of food was a certain grain. And I don't know if we were helping them or what, but we got them some of this grain, but they were having trouble, like they were getting sick and stuff. And come to find out, the grain didn't have the dirt on it from their country. And so the dirt was actually providing some of those vitamins and minerals that they needed. We have a government growth rate that has happened at a crazy rate for the last 9 months. What's going to happen to that growth rate in the next 3 months if you extend this emergency declaration? We, the public, because of COVID, are told we cannot use our own house. We cannot use our library, the galleries, nor even the chapel here at the State House. Again, all poisonous fruit. A few issues of the bills, and I want everybody to know that I do not have a degree. I am not a lawyer, a doctor, or anything like that. I'm just a citizen here with my family. But I printed out Senate Bill 14. I printed out the 2019 version of 48924 and 48925. And I also printed out House Bill 2016. I didn't get all the way through the House Bill 2016. I apologize for that, but I really won't go too much into that. A few issues that I have with the bill specifically is, are doctors allowed to provide abortion medications through telehealth during this state of disaster emergency? What about volunteers using the DSM-5 to diagnose people with presumed mental illness or substance use issues? Here's a good one. What happens because of nobody being here if we were to have an attack by another foreign country of an EMP or something and all our internet went down? What contingency plans do you have that would allow me to be a participant in this process, let alone all of you? Another concern of mine, there's dates even as far, I believe, as January 2022 that's in this bill. What does that mean? Is the intent of some people to have this go on until January 2022? Because of the things that have happened, and the things that people are doing, wearing masks and using masks and improperly and stuff, hand sanitizers and everything, I believe that there is a argument that we are making overly sanitized popsicles that are not going to have good immune response when something else comes down the line. Is there an FDA-approved mask? Is there an FDA-approved test for COVID, for SARS-CoV-2? CDC, if you go to the CDC website right now, they call this an outbreak. What is the difference between a pandemic and an outbreak? If we aren't in a pandemic, then we shouldn't be having this anyway. I'm worried about unnatural mutation. Because we aren't in the groove of everything and just living our lives, is there a possibility for unnatural mutation of any virus or parasites? The World Health Organization has recommended that no alcohol be used. However, we are picking winners and losers when it comes to some of the response to this. A couple other little things. If there is a concern about judicial issues where people are not having speedy trials and the consequences thereof, I consider that collateral damage to a better way than making sure that we get this state of disaster emergency out. That issue should not be an issue as far as I'm concerned. Neither should the executive branch trying to make another declaration that can be challenged, and it also can be rescinded from you. And then with the back contingency plan of allowing our constitutional sheriffs to take care of the counties. I guess that's about all I have. I want to thank everybody, and just know that I miss you, seeing you, and I wanted to bring my family here to help them understand how important it is that they are involved in the process, the civics and everything, because I cherish everything about it. So with that, I will thank you. And also a shout out to Senator Karen Tyson, the lone patriot that stood up to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Katie Reiniker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Judiciary Committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Katie Reiniker, and I'm from Inman, Kansas. I will be brief. Before you vote to extend this emergency declaration, I would just like to ask you to keep a few things in mind during your discussion. First of all, what are the criteria for allowing this emergency declaration to expire? I have asked this question at all levels of government, all the way from our local health officer at the County Health Department in McPherson County. I've asked our county commissioners. I've asked our Inman City Council. I called the KDHE and I asked them. I even called the governor's office and asked them. No one had an answer for me. So I will bring my questions to you. Will this declaration be allowed to expire based on the number of cases of coronavirus or the number of deaths? Will it be based on vaccination rate, mask usage, hospitalization rate, ICU beds? Last week, during the Senate hearing on this bill, some concern was expressed regarding federal funds. Is that the criteria when we get enough federal money? Before you vote to extend this for an 8th time, I believe it's 8, I ask you to please consider what the criteria is for it to stop. The people of Kansas are tired. If you don't have an answer, I urge you to allow it to expire. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Colson Reiniker.
Hello, members of the chair. Sorry, this is my first time doing this. My name is Colson Reiniker. I'm a sophomore from Inman High School. And on my way up here, when I got to the Capitol building, I was told to wait and to see if my name was on the list. It was. So when we got in there, no one told us to put our masks on. I oppose this bill because no one enforces it. So what's the point of having it in the first place if no one's going to enforce it? Yeah, that's about it. I'm not good at public speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Colson. Nathan Reiniker.
Hello. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Nathan Reiniker, and I'm opposed to the extension of the emergency declaration. We are told to wear masks and social distance throughout the day, but I don't think that many people aren't really following the rules. Like going to family gatherings, holiday parties, carpooling, friends' houses, and many other things without obeying the masks and social distancing, and as well as school. You have to wear a mask and social distance half the time, but other times you don't have to because of exercise or lunch. So if we don't do it half the time, why shouldn't we be able to choose whether or not we do it at all? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any, I don't show any other opponents listed. Is anyone else here, I guess in person or online as an opponent? Seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 14. Committee, as I let you all know earlier, we're not going to be working any bills today. And moving forward the next couple of days, we're going to continue to be a little flexible. As you know, we're not going to vote while people are working remotely. So that means no votes today, no votes tomorrow, which puts us on the very short timeline that we already had to deal with the disaster declaration and the sunsets in House Bill 2016. Makes that timeline even shorter. If I had a calendar in front of me on the screen, I'd show you all, but we have to have it. Again, if you're in favor of extending the sunsets and extending the disaster, it has to be published in the journal, it has to be signed by the governor, and it has to pass both chambers all by the 26th, which is a week from today. So given that, we're not going to have the ability, I don't think, to work this bill in committee. Instead, my understanding is it's likely going to be brought up to the full House to debate. So if you have amendments, I'd encourage you to get with Natalie to have those amendments ready. If we, let's say, debate it on the floor on Thursday and it passes without amendments, then it could be to the governor by late Thursday, signed into law, and certainly meet that January 26th deadline. If we have amendments, then that means the bill would have to go to conference. And so we would conference, I assume, Friday, Saturday, over the weekend, and try to have conference committee reports ready for both chambers to take up on Monday in time for both chambers to, again, hopefully adopt those and then get them to the governor and still try to meet the deadline of having it published by the Secretary of State's office. So tight timeline no matter what, but we need to continue to be working at this point individually on making sure if you've got amendments that those are ready so we can debate those when it gets to the floor. Any questions about that I'm apologize that we're in this situation, but just a number of things have delayed. I think everything beyond, nothing really within our control. And so we're trying to work that timeline as best we can to make sure we meet that January 26th deadline. Not seeing any hands. Committee, we will meet again tomorrow. If you're listening in, if you're a conferee, tomorrow the only option will be virtual. So there will not be anyone in the committee room. We're taking up 2 bills, and we'll make sure the conferees and everyone has the WebEx link. I think you all already have the WebEx link for tomorrow. So if there's nothing else for today, we are adjourned. Have a good evening, and we'll see you all on the computer screens tomorrow. Thank you.